Nick, welcome to the show. Round two, episode two. We made it. Made it past the first round. How you
That's
feeling, mate?
it. It's good. Good.
Yep,
Very, very hot though, I must say. Very, very warm.
absolutely.
So for those of
Yep.
you who are listening, I am wearing a tank top. It is very warm. I think it's like 32 degrees right now, potentially 29, but it's still very warm. So
Absolutely. I just got back from the gym, so I'm feeling the sweat as well, man. But yeah, it's good to be here. Good to be back,
that's
chatting
it.
to you again. And today's topic, I guess, a little bit more of a thorny topic than last week. Last
Yeah.
week we're just introducing ourselves to the audience, but where we left off at the end of last week, we're talking about the motivations of starting the podcast, and we're talking
Yep.
about addressing the fact that usually these like real deep conversations are kind of lacking in society at the moment where everything is so surface level. And so our podcast is like one small drop in the ocean of sort of
Yeah.
creating more long form content, more information to sort of delve a bit deeper into, or an avenue to do that sort of thing. And I guess having this sort of society that we're living in being so sort of like superficial, short term attention span, all that type of stuff, it has led to a fair bit of loneliness,
Mm.
which is what we're going to delve into today. The podcast topic is the loneliness epidemic. And so it sounds kind of somber, but we want to spend some time describing what the issue actually
Yeah.
is and spend most of the podcast talking about how we've found ways in our life to counteract the issue and maybe bring it back to our childhoods and the way we grew up and sort of the life skills we learned along the way that have helped
Yeah,
us
that's
with
it.
this particular trend that's going on. So, yeah, how does that sound, Nick? You up for the challenge?
Yeah, yeah,
All right.
it's certainly a thorny issue, that's for sure. Far
Yeah.
out. I know it's a very popular topic though, especially because of COVID. I mean, it's been popular for quite a long time. I was just looking at the literature before, and there's stuff going back 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, which is insane. But I think COVID has certainly um, magnified that issue a lot more because of like lockdowns and people had to stay indoors, et cetera, et cetera. People can't go out. So yeah, interesting one to tackle for sure.
100%. Yeah. It's interesting you say that it's been going on for a while. What does the stats show? Is the trend in the wrong direction or the right direction as far as loneliness? Are people getting more lonely or less lonely as we move into
Yeah.
2023 and beyond?
I was just having a rough look at the stats, and
Yeah.
it seems like the general kind of consensus across a couple of studies. I was just looking at, by the way, systematic literature reviews, which basically just summarize a whole bunch of different studies. So I didn't
Nice.
have to read all of them.
Yep.
But effectively, it seems like older generations are less lonely than younger generations. There's a lot of different factors to it, technology being just one of them,
Mm.
not necessarily the be it end all, but remote work, all those sort of stuff. As productive as it is, and both of us were talking about earlier today, how like I remote work and I don't have to do a whole bunch of stuff, which allows me to do a whole bunch of other stuff.
Mm.
Um, you don't get that human interaction anymore, or you get
Yep.
less of that, right? Video calls, yes, but you don't have that water cooler conversations, if you will.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely, man. And bringing it from like the macro to the micro in terms of like
yeah,
our personal experiences.
mm,
Growing up in a densely populated country like Singapore before coming over here, where there's the urban sprawl and stuff.
yeah,
I don't know how you felt when you came over here, but this was back in 2002, 2003 for both of us, I think, around that time. I
mm,
definitely felt like. Outside of school, when I was back at home, I felt the loneliness because in
yeah,
Singapore, one of the cool things about being in such a dense urban environment is that there's so many kids around just within a stone's throw away. So I
yeah,
used to live in this high-rise building that
yep,
was sort of facing a park, and there was another high-rise building facing the park from the other direction. So these two buildings facing each other, and the park had this like um, I think a badminton court that we'd kind of
mm,
use for like indoor soccer type setting as
yeah,
well. But it
yeah,
was
yeah,
it,
yeah,
it, it was all outdoors, and then there was like a playground for like the little kids. And so basically, primary school, a lot of people like playing soccer, which is like, at least a 5-on-5 sport when you're playing in that
Yep.
size of field. So like over here in Australia to like organize a 5v5 side game, there's like a lot of logistics involved and you need to like have a time and like,
Yeah.
this is when we show up and this is the equipment we have and all this type of stuff. In Singapore, it was literally you step outside of your house or your apartment and you're on the balcony
Yeah.
and you're looking down, you see that you got one mate over there with a soccer ball just juggling it on his own. Like, oh, cool, he's over there. So you go down. 10 other people have the same idea. Like within the next 20 minutes, like you've started a
That's
soccer
it. Yep.
match, and it's like
100%. Yep.
it's that easy, right? And so yeah, I spent a lot of my childhood just like being surrounded by other kids, not having to ever organize
Yeah.
like play dates or anything like that. That was a foreign concept to us. And then, fast forward to moving to Australia, and it's like, all right, I've like come back home from school. There's not much homework because it's Australia. Like, what am I supposed to do with my time? Like, what are my friends doing and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So I would always try to be proactive and like give them calls and go like, hey, what are you doing? Do you want to hang out and stuff like that? And they thought I was a bit weird doing that. Like, why do you want to hang out? It's like, well, what else are you doing with your time? So I notice there's a lot of like
Yeah.
sedentary, isolated behavior here, more so compared to there. I mean, even there was like a big like gaming craze and stuff like that. But like over
Yeah.
here, that was like almost exclusively what all my mates did outside of school is just like watch TV, play video games, like stuff that doesn't require other people.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I think I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
This comes back to a cultural thing.
Mm.
And I'm not trying to say like, one culture is better than the other. I'm just saying it's just different.
Yes.
Um, I think this comes from the fact that Singapore was kicked out of Malaysia like 60 years ago now.
Okay. Yeah.
And because I feel like it's because of that. And then um, the prime minister at the time, like he was a legend. And I don't think there's anyone else like him anymore. But
Mm.
he started this. I don't know if it's him, but like, anyways, people in Singapore started this thing. I'm sure you've heard of the word kampong spirit, right?
Mm. Yes.
And that basically just translates to like community.
Mm.
That's all it means. And all you had was each other.
Yeah.
And that's the culture that has lived on right, throughout the ages in Singapore. Singapore isn't very, it's not a very old country, but nevertheless, throughout the generations, it's kind of that kampong spirit, if you will, has kind of lived on.
Mm.
So I think that's why you have a lot of that. And that's why like Singapore is built around all of that. So that's why there's always badminton courts downstairs. There's playgrounds downstairs. There's soccer courts downstairs. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like 6 p.m. hits,
Yeah.
man, that soccer court
Yeah.
is busy until 12 a.m. And
Yes.
it's just rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds of people.
Yeah.
Basketball, same thing.
Mm.
There's a basketball court everywhere. I was so surprised when I came here when athletic fields are difficult to find.
Yeah.
Not every suburb has an athletics track.
Yep.
Not every athletics track also has like chin-up bars and, a fitness corner, and like all those stuff are really difficult to find here.
Yeah, and
Um,
also, how many of these things that we see that are in Australia are like completely empty? Like you go over there and
correct.
there's not a single soul.
Correct.
It's like amazing facilities and no one's using it. And so yeah, that's another like culture shock. Coming over here.
100%.
It's just there's just
100%.
not that many people at the end of the day, like per square meter of land.
Yeah,
We
yeah, the
we
density
are
just isn't there.
yeah, we are very, very sprawled out. So, and yeah, that
Yeah.
that leads to that. You don't really see your neighbor that often, whereas over there
Yeah.
you would see the whole town basically. You're both facing each other.
Yeah. I think like the like growing up, I had this, right? My mum always instills this in the three of us. So I've got two other siblings. She always says like, you three are all you've got,
Mm.
and you always have to rely on each other, and that's that. And I think that's like the general mentality in Singapore. It's very like you should be dependent on people. You should, try and have a network around you. And that's why I think family, extended family is so important in Singapore.
Mm. Yep.
Like, man, every weekend, I would see my cousins at least once. Some of my
Interesting.
cousins, I would see them 7 days a week.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
very
yeah. Like
different.
they're gonna come down in a couple months' time. I'll hit it off with them like we never left. And I've not seen them in 4 years now.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we all grew up together and my grandma's house, like I was saying this to someone else, the patriarch matriarch is like the place to be. Everyone's house
Mm.
was like within a 15-minute walk from my grandparents' place. It was
Wow.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
Like all our lives are built around my grandparents. That's it.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay, so
Yeah.
this is where we're
Like,
quite different in that regard. Because for me, when I moved over to Singapore, when I left Nepal, where I was
yeah.
born, it was really just me and my immediate family. So mum, dad, and my sister wasn't even
Yes.
born back then. So yeah, it was just the three of us, and we didn't really have that sort of family network that was in Singapore. We'd have
Yeah.
people, coming to visit for like a month, staying over, and then leaving again. But yeah, it was a totally different experience. But yeah, in terms
100%.
of having that community, fostering that sort of local spirit, you definitely agree with you 100%. It was always like that in Singapore. I guess that doesn't mean that everyone was like, hugs and kisses and stuff like that. Like
No, it
it
wasn't.
wasn't it
It definitely
wasn't
wasn't.
that lovey-dovey. Like things got pretty intense on the soccer field. Like, it often end in like arguments and tears because
Oh
everyone took
yeah.
things
Oh,
so seriously over
yeah.
there. Like
Yeah.
even a friendly game
100%.
of soccer. Yeah,
100%.
that was it was
In this regard, I can
crazy.
100% say I feel like Aussies are better. They're a lot more
Yeah.
chill.
Yes. Yes.
Like a social game is a social game, right? They're not gonna go crazy about it. Oh man, people in Singapore get into fights and everything because of it.
It is nuts, man, dude. Like over there, a lot of people play barefooted as well when they play soccer,
True. Yep.
and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I could never do that. I was like, oh no, like my feet would get way too scratched up playing like barefooted
Yeah.
footed on
That's it.
concrete. And it's like 30 degrees over there all the time as well. So I used to always just wear like sports shoes, like runners, and
Yeah.
we're playing soccer and. Occasionally, you're gonna step on someone's foot when you're playing soccer, and the common reaction was like they would get pissed off at me if I accidentally stepped on their foot while playing soccer, and that would be like the most common source of an argument. It's like, oh, Marnie, you're always stepping on my foot, and then things just escalate. So yeah, no, it was
Oh man.
it was funny time like looking back at it, but
Yeah.
yeah, we treated every match like it was a World Cup final or something. It was so serious.
Wait, so I want to know from your perspective, right?
Yeah,
You being here now for about the same time as me,
yeah.
like, what are your thoughts on the loneliness side of things? Because I know you jumped on to how we met actually was through Bumble, like
Yep.
Bumble BFF,
Bumble
right?
BFF. Like, make
Yep,
sure
Bumble
we include
BFF.
the BFF part of
The
it.
BFF part, yes, that's very
Yes.
important.
Yeah.
Um, and like, what was the catalyst to that? How did you go about that? And what were the results of that after doing that for however long you did that for?
Oh man, yeah, I didn't do the Bumble BFF thing for too long. But yeah, let me just explain this to the audience because anyone listening will be like, "What? These
Please.
guys met on Bumble? Like, what? They in a relationship or something?" No, we are not in a relationship. It's a completely platonic friendship. You can make friends on Bumble. It's not just a dating
Yeah.
app, but most people know it as a dating app, and I knew it as a dating app. I think both of us were on it in the dating side of Bumble. And this was during the pandemic. So we're sort of few
Yep.
months into the pandemic. I'm living on my own. Nick's living with family, but we're sort of constricted to our 5 kilometer
Yeah,
radius.
that's it.
People are listening from outside of Melbourne, Victoria. You might not be aware, but Victoria had like the record of how long the lockdowns were
Yeah.
through like the 2 years of the pandemic. So yeah, we have that unfortunate record of just being the most locked down state in the world. So yeah, definitely it was getting
That's
to
it.
that point where people were getting like quite antsy and not being forced to sort of live in isolation or just live within the family unit that they were in. So yeah, I was on these dating apps, and the topic isn't really about dating apps, but one weird side effect that I had being on dating apps is it actually increased my loneliness level. So I felt lonelier
Interesting.
going through it because like I'm sure you can relate to this, Nick. With dating apps, a lot of conversations you might match with someone, but then to go from matching with someone to getting to a phone call, or matching with someone to getting to a video call, or matching with someone
Yeah.
to getting to a date, that uh, rate of success is like very low. So what you end up doing is like you get your hopes up. Oh, okay, there's this human being that I can interact with,
Yeah.
and then it never reaches like a real interaction. So
Yeah.
if you're constantly sort of getting those sort of dopamine hits and then
Mm,
the dopamine hits, the letdown, you're actually, I think, better off not even being on the app.
true.
You're less reminded of the fact that you're trying
Yeah.
to connect with people and failing to do so. So
Yeah,
I,
that's yeah.
I,
Anecdotally, agreed.
yeah, yeah. So this is kind of my opinion of dating apps. People would agree or disagree, but I was on them. I realized that this was happening to me, like psychologically, and I was like,
Yep.
okay, let me try this BFF feature, best friends forever feature, which sounded super cringy. And I'm like, am I seriously going on an app to make
Yep.
friends? I've never struggled in the friendship department. So for me to go to an app to do that, I'm like, all right, we're in lockdown, desperate times call for desperate measures. Let me try this thing out. So I remember we matched on the friendship app on like the first day that I was on it. And I don't think I was on it for that long. It would have been like a week max or something like that.
Yep.
And the
Yep.
good thing with the friendship part of this app was a lot more interactions were happening like with very
100%.
little effort. Like, I didn't always need to be the first person to send a message. It didn't always need to be like sort of one way directed. I felt like people were messaging me, I was messaging them,
Yeah,
stuff like
100%.
that. And yeah, I ended up making a few interesting friends through that period. A lot of them I don't really talk to anymore, except for yourself, just because we didn't have that much in common. But during the pandemic, it was cool to chat to a few different people. There were a
Yeah.
few people in the CBD where I was based, and so it was like within the 5K radius. So we ended up crossing paths. You and I just had conversations like this, like just video calls
Yep.
and stuff like that. But yeah, that
Yep.
that was that was really cool. Like I remember when I was talking to you, I don't know how long it had been since I'd had like a real conversation with someone outside of just my family for like it might have been like a good week or something. So I was going a bit stir crazy, and then talking to you, I was
Yeah.
like, oh man, it's like oxygen. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's the funny
Amen.
story of how we met, and definitely came from a time of extreme loneliness. I'd say in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going stir crazy
Yeah.
during lockdowns. It was insane. I'm I I would say I tell people I'm a compulsive extrovert, and I think I was just chatting to a friend before this, right?
Mm,
And I was actually about to take a nap,
mm,
so I set my alarm, and just as I was about to doze off, he called.
mm.
Um, I jumped on the phone, chatted to him. He just broke up with his girlfriend.
Oh,
However, in saying that, he took it surprisingly, extremely, extremely well.
okay.
And I think so the point I'm trying to make is you can tell you're an extrovert when you jump off a phone call and you're super energized. I was like, oh, I'm
Mm,
so I'm so refreshed. I'm so energized. I
yep.
can't sleep anymore. So I couldn't
Yes.
take a nap
Okay.
after that. I was a bit
It.
upset about that. But anyways,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's good that you're an extrovert. I don't actually know what I am.
Ambivert in
Yeah,
between.
maybe, because a lot of the things that I do for work is like individual, just like sitting
Yep.
there and just getting the work done. And I much prefer that than like the collaborative day. Like if I have a day full of meetings, I'm not a fan of that. If it's a day full of just focus time, I really like that. But then outside of that, if I'm just like on my own, doing my own thing for days and days, yeah, it definitely gets to me as well. So I think human beings in general, we are social creatures. So whether
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
extrovert, introvert, or like anywhere within that scale, you're gonna need your dose of human
100%.
interaction,
Yep.
however
Yeah,
much or little that would be. And I guess
yeah,
the loneliness epidemic that's going on at the moment is most people are not getting that basic human need of connection met. And
yeah,
this is
yeah,
where things get a bit worrying because, there's health effects. This isn't just a
yeah.
feel good
Correct.
type of thing.
Yes.
We've read articles about risk of heart disease, Alzheimer's,
Yeah,
cortisol levels are usually pretty high. So the stress hormone sort of elevates when you spend a lot of time just on your own without a sense of community, sense of connection. So yeah, there's definitely health impacts to this, and then
100%.
productivity impacts as well. Anxiety and depression usually rise in people that are experiencing loneliness. So it's definitely something worth talking about. And you brought up a really good point that the younger the generation is, the more they seem to suffer from loneliness and its
Yeah, it's
related consequences.
yeah, there's definitely a higher there's the research definitely shows there's a higher proportion of younger people as compared to the older generation, older as in like the boomers, etc., etc.
Yeah.
In saying that though, it's not that they don't experience loneliness either.
Mm.
So I work in the aged care space,
Yeah.
and the organization that I work with has identified social isolation in the elderly or older persons as a priority area as well. So it is a big thing alongside dementia, alongside mental health stuff. Yeah, big enough that we want to throw money at it.
Gotcha. Yeah. See,
Yeah.
that's quite intuitive to me. Where it's like, okay, if you're an elderly person, let's say you have a life partner, husband or wife that
Yep.
you've been with for like 30, 40, 50 years or something like that, and then one of them passes away, then it's like
Yeah.
you've lost your life partner that you've been with for such a long time,
Yeah.
right? It's a massive hole that how are you going to find someone to fill that hole that has this shared history with you and all that type of stuff? So
Yeah.
I totally understand, like at that age, with a lot of people having lost their significant other,
Yeah.
loneliness would
I
be
mean,
massive. But
yeah.
our generation and the younger generation, that is counterintuitive when you think about the amount of technology, all the apps we have, how tech savvy we are. We can just connect with each other so easily. Yet we have this
Yeah.
loneliness problem.
It's very interesting. It's very, very interesting to me because I was chatting to someone the other day and they were saying how even a phone call, right? Like you and I jump on the phone. I jump on the phone with most of my close friends. I'll do that.
Yep.
And the only reason why I don't jump on with anyone else is because they don't feel comfortable. And
Yep.
they were saying how a phone call is very intimate,
Hmm.
but my interpretation is, but you call people at like pizza or whatever, and you do that sort of stuff. Well, I was just thinking about it just before, and I feel like the younger generation, the generation just below us, like my younger brother's generation, Gen Z, right?
Yep.
The teens, the early 20s, they actually don't do that anymore.
Mm.
When I was younger, I had to call Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I actually
There was
I
no
had to
app.
call them. There
Yeah.
was no app, right?
Yep.
There was nothing like that. I actually had to call people. But remember, Gen Z don't.
Mm.
They have Uber Eats.
Yep.
They have menu log. They have all this stuff. And I know it's only been like a couple of years, but nevertheless, it's been a couple of years.
Mm.
And they are, I was reading somewhere, they are the only generation that is younger than Google.
Yeah. That's
So
crazy.
they've never grown up without Google. Like
Yeah.
you and I have grown up without Google,
Yep. Yeah,
right? We grew up
I
with
remember in
like,
school we had this thing called Ask Jeeves. Did you
yeah,
ever, you ever try that?
Ask
That
Jeeves.
was terrible. It never
It
gave
was
you
so
any
terrible. Came out
anything
all
that
these
you were
random
interested in.
things. Yeah, it was such a terrible search engine. I remember using Yahoo, Ask Jeeves,
Yeah,
and all these other random ones. But anyways,
yeah.
Gen Z's like the generation that has not grown up without technology. I mean, there are certainly exceptions to the rule,
Mm,
but I think by and large, most of them have. And I think maybe this is potentially one of the things that's causing, the traditional methods of communication to be just a little bit more intimate. And I
okay.
think maybe that's why they prefer the apps. Maybe that's why they prefer all that sort of stuff. But like you said before, nothing really can replace a face-to-face or even on the phone kind of conversation, right? Where you hear someone's voice and you hear the intonations as compared to seeing a block of text.
Yes, yeah, that's right. And in terms of the amount of time it takes to get an idea across,
Yeah.
it's
Oh my
just,
gosh.
it's,
Yeah, I
it's
just I
crazy,
just
right?
can't. I just
Yeah,
can't. I remember chatting to you earlier today and I was like, "Hey, how'd you go with this?" I was like, "Stuff it. How about a call?"
yeah,
It's
that's
it's
it.
just it's just not gonna work. I foresee that it's not gonna work.
Yep, yep, absolutely. And yeah, if I'm thinking about my close friends, we predominantly have like the meaningful conversations, the ones we'll remember
Yep.
via phone call or video call, or we meet up face to face. I was doing this thing. I'm based in the city. I'm currently in the suburbs, but heading back to the city soon. When I'm in the city, I go on walks with friends as well.
That's cool.
Because
Yeah.
sometimes if you're just going out for dinner and catching up, that's good. But if you have a few friends that you want to catch up with and you don't want to go out for dinner like multiple times a week, then going for a walk is actually a really good substitute for that. Because really, it's just an excuse to have a conversation, right? Whatever you're
Yeah.
doing is not that important. It's just an excuse to have a conversation. So yeah,
True.
I have a mate that I go on like long walks with, and we just talk about things. I have like you would generally do video calls just because we're not based that close to each other, but sometimes we hang out
Yep.
when you're in the city as well. Yeah, there's a number of ways to get this face to face interaction. And I guess in this podcast, I'm trying to toe this line of like sharing our experiences while also not being too preachy on like our way is the right way. But I'm thinking
Yeah.
more in terms of the typical person that's listening to this podcast. Maybe they're thinking, oh, yeah, good point about the loneliness. I also feel a sense of loneliness, but what can I do about it? So, if
Yeah,
that is
that's it.
you and you're listening, okay, then we're going to give you some advice, all right? Because I think we have found over the last few years, during the lockdown phase and also coming out of the lockdown, a bunch of
Mm.
different ways to
Yeah.
have more meaningful face-to-face interactions in your life. So I guess that's the focus of the podcast. Obviously, there's a ton of apps to kind of meet random strangers and then start text
Yeah.
messaging and stuff like that. That's one way. But like we said, it's not really an organic form of communication. If you want to go to the organic form
Yeah.
of communication and you're feeling like apps are usually not leading to that, okay, there's lots of other ways, right? So
100%.
a few of the ways that I want to list out that kind of worked for me was the Bumble BFF thing was a bit of a quirky thing we did during lockdown. I don't really
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
that anymore, but that's not to say that other people aren't doing that. So if you want to check that out, if you're a female, you'll see other females. If you
Yep.
go on Bumble BFF, and if you are male, you'll see other males. Now there won't be a
Correct.
lot
Yeah.
of people compared to the dating because it's predominantly a dating app. It's not really known for the friendship feature. But I mean, if you see 50 people, there might be like five people that you kind of match with, and then there might be two people that you really have something in common with. Now, that's two more friends than you had yesterday. So that's kind of one
True.
way
Very
to,
true.
to meet some people in your area. The other way that I found that's really good is Meetup. And I'm surprised that people don't even know
Really?
what Meetup is. Yeah. So, like, Meetup is an app. It's also meetup.com, the website.
Yep.
You can go on it. It will using GPS, or if you type in your address, it'll tell you what events are going on in your area. You can
Yep.
explore by what's happening today, or you can explore by what's happening based on your interests. So it'll give you like a bunch of what are you interested in. If you're interested in like yoga, meditation, I'm just making this up, but let's say you're interested in yoga, meditation, self improvement, whatever it is, you're going to get events that are related to that particular thing. So if you're looking to make more meaningful connections, you probably want to find people with shared interests. And so going to events that you're interested in and being social will probably lead to longer lasting friendships. Now, just going to
100%.
the event is like half of the effort. Going and talking to strangers is the other half. Half that people find terrifying. So
Yes.
we can talk about that as well. But right now, I'm just talking about getting the ball rolling. So going to these
Yep.
types of events. So for me, I went on the Meetup app a few years back, and I noticed there was a group that was just for 20s and 30-year-olds. And so it's like, okay, similar age bracket to the age bracket that I'm in. I'm in this age bracket, so I'm going to meet people that are of a similar age. And it's for Melbourne and surrounding suburbs. I was like, okay, perfect. I live in Melbourne, so
Cool.
tick tick.
Yep.
Let me go check this out. And they had like really chill events, like walking by the Yarra. And so you go on this 1 hour walk by the Yarra, and you just talk to the people in the walking group, and there'd be like usually about 20 people that come to this thing. So it's easy to find within 20 people 2 or 3 people that are easy to have a conversation with. And if you find like the conversation isn't going anywhere, just like slow down a little bit so that you end up at the back of the pack, and you've got brand new people to talk to you, right? So
Okay.
it's a very easy way to
Conversational tips
yeah,
for Marnie.
very easy way. And like I noticed there were some people that were very quiet. I'm more on the chatty side. Like you're also more on chatty side. That's why we have a podcast, right? So I think in those type of situations, people like us, we thrive because whether the other person is chatty or not, we can kind of drive conversation. If you are a little bit more of an introvert, I think this is also a good environment to sort of dip your toes into to meet people because you're walking, you don't have to talk, but if you want to talk, you can talk type of thing, right? And if you're more of a listener, you can listen to other people, and even
Yep.
that is a very
True.
healthy form of connection, even if you're not making most of the conversation yourself. So yeah, I'd say what have I said so far? Bumble BFF,
Bumble meetup.
Meetup, Meetup. I would rank higher than Bumble BFF in terms of the amount of people that you're
Agreed.
you're going to
Yep. I
meet
would second
and
that.
and the quality of the experiences as well, because it's not just like an app for friendship. It's literally an app for doing things that you're interested in doing, and you're
Yeah.
going to make friends along the way as well. So I wish more people would know, like, knew of this app and use this app because generally I meet the same people. Like, there's like a good 100 people that I've met through Bumble apps. Sorry, not Bumble. Meetups. Going to different events, but then you notice it's the same people because they all know about Meetup and how effective it is. But I don't think it's
Yeah.
reached that critical mass where like everybody knows about. Like everybody knows about Tinder, Bumble, Hinge. How many people know
Yeah.
about Meetup, right? But it is an important form of connection. Dating isn't the only form of connection. There is friendship, a certain thing called friendship, right? And this is a great way to do that. So those are my two that I'm thinking of off the top of my head. Have you got any ideas, Nick, of how you've made friends in this modern age?
I think to summarize it, right,
Yeah,
it's you need to find things that you really, really enjoy,
yeah,
or even just do like stuff that you don't won't necessarily do, and then randomly somehow it'll just happen.
mm,
But by the way, I also have to say, right, I think the most important thing is like you have to really be intentional of making sure that you're actually chatting to different people and meeting strangers and all that sort of stuff.
yeah,
I met you through Bumble BFF. I
mm,
met one of my really good friends because he was a training partner like years ago,
yeah,
right? So that was an easy one. We trained together. That was that. One of the other guys I met, it was through weightlifting,
mm,
right? So he was in a weightlifting class. That was it. One of the other guys I met randomly on an athletics track. I was there just helping some other guy out. I was
yeah.
there helping a vision impaired person run.
Right.
I
Okay.
wasn't
Yeah.
even competing myself, but
Yeah.
he was very, very proactive in talking to everyone
Yeah.
there. And he's also a chatterbox, which
Gotcha.
kind of works out quite nicely. His
Yes.
name is also Nick. So it worked out quite nicely.
Yeah.
And that's how I met him. And then,
Mm.
a year down the track, we're still friends and he's helped me a lot
Yeah.
in my life. So I think that the apps are certainly helpful, but more importantly, it's just being intentional around what you're doing and being aware of your surroundings and trying to meet people in different areas, even at your workplace, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And because
So
we're
yeah.
because we're both male, we're coming in from the male perspective.
Yeah.
Based on the articles that I've read, um, a lot of males connect through shared activities,
Stuff.
right?
Yeah,
Right. So
doing stuff.
yeah. So just the idea of getting on a video call and having a chat might not appeal to most men. So if that doesn't appeal to you, there's other ways to connect. Like a lot of the friends that I have, I connect with them because I have an activity that I do with them. So you're a
Yeah.
great example with all your gym mates that are all working through this common goal of weightlifting. You end
Yep.
up forming this close bond because you're always training together. You kind of joke around as you're training, and
That's it. Yep.
connections form. After training, you might kind of have a chat at the parking lot, that sort of thing, right? But you're there to
Yes.
train.
Yep.
You're not really there to make friends, and so that feels a bit more palatable for the average male.
Agreed.
So this is
Yep.
kind of why it's a bit more of a challenge for males than females, according to this article. Is like a lot of people, as males, are sort of trained to be stoic and live in solitude and just have this like I've got it all figured
Yeah.
out, repress my emotions type of thing, right?
That,
So
yeah,
this is
that's
this is how you kind of ease into it. Just have an activity that involves other people that you enjoy, that they enjoy, and then it'll sort of take care of itself.
yeah, like that's oh man, that's the other thing as well, far out. Like guys have to be stoic and this and that.
Yeah.
I don't believe in that anymore.
Okay. Gotcha.
The more I spend time with certain people, the more I realize like, hey, actually, the people who not have the most friends, but have the deepest of relationships and have the best connections.
Yeah.
By connections, I mean like emotional connections with people
Yeah.
are the ones who are actually genuine.
Mm.
From what I've seen anyways, right?
Yeah.
There's something to be said about like, sleazy salespeople and people who just say what you want to hear, all that sort of stuff. And that's a different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about is like people who genuinely want to make friends. The main thing is that they're genuine, they own up to their shit, and they are who they are. What you see is what you get.
Yeah.
That kind of situation, right? That
Absolutely.
there's nothing more than what they present, and that's it.
Man,
And I
that
think that's like the most important thing, especially for guys more so. I don't know about the female's perspective, but for guys,
yep.
like you need to just be you. I know
Yes.
it's very simple and straightforward advice, but it's actually very difficult to implement
Yep.
because I feel like sometimes guys have to put on this facade of like, oh man, I work in this like great job, I earn six figures, I bought a house or I've got like a gajillion things on my plate,
Mm.
I'm so well accomplished, all that sort of stuff. And
Yes.
I think it's not always about that.
Yep.
Now that I've met you, now that I've met all these people, it's like it's never been about that.
Mm.
It's cool that we can talk about all this stuff,
Yeah.
but it's never been about that. Like the stuff that you and I talk about, we don't always talk about investing or like how to make more money or like how to climb the ladder. It's always about like, I've noticed this deficiency in myself or
Mm.
like, I'm trying to communicate better or I'm trying to do this better, this sport, this activity, this thing.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely, man. And I think, and I've been guilty of this myself, where I'm trying to put on the best version of myself in the beginning. Like it's sort of you're not really meeting me, you're meeting my representative. And then
yeah,
slowly you have to like peel back layers to get to know
yeah.
the real me, which includes flaws and all, like everybody has. So this is one
Yep.
of those things where if you kind of bring that up too early, sometimes it freaks people out. It's like, oh, why are you telling me about your life problems? We only just met, type of thing, right? So, with some people, they're just so genuine, and you just have that connection that, like, on the first conversation, you're getting in deep. And with other people, it's kind of like the first connection is just the superficial stuff. What do you do for work?
Yeah.
What are your hobbies? That sort of thing. And it leads to like some interesting conversations. And if you already have like interesting hobbies and stuff like that, that can still be a fun conversation, even though you're not getting into the weeds of like what makes you tick and the psychology
Yep.
and all that type of stuff. But these things take time. Like usually friendships are not like off the bat
Yeah, of course.
instantaneous. So,
Yeah.
doing these shared activities, like if you're doing the weightlifting thing, on the first day, you might just learn the person's name. That's all it is. On the second day, you might learn what their, I don't know, relationship status is, whether they're single or in a relationship. The third day, you might find out what they do for work when they're not at the gym, and then it's like it
Yeah.
slowly builds.
It's
So some people,
it's
it's like instantaneous. Like when you and I met, because of that stir crazy period, it's like, oh, another human being. Let me bare my soul.
agreed.
It was like that. But
Let me bare my soul.
it's like it doesn't happen with every person. So if you're
Yeah, for
feeling
sure.
like, oh, I've met this person, I didn't really like, things didn't like sort of go from 0 to 100 immediately. Don't discount the person. Don't say, oh, they're too
Yeah.
reserved or whatever it is. Whether you're male or you're female, I've met people from both categories that are quite reserved in the beginning and then slowly kind of warm up to you over time.
Yeah.
So I'd say try and try again. Just be friendly
Yeah.
every time. And yeah, persistence is the key with that. The other thing I wanted to mention related to the thing about the perfect facade and like the six-figure salary and all that type of stuff that you mentioned that people have going on. I think this is a very common thing because of social media as well, because we tend to
True.
compare
I agree.
ourselves
Yep.
to the ideal version of our peers and people that we're following on social media.
Yeah.
And so what we end up feeling generally is like this sense of, oh, this is the standard, when in reality, everyone's kind of just putting their best foot forward, their best face forward on social media. So we end up doing the same thing. And so
Yeah.
everybody's kind of living this curated life of comparison to one another. And so when you do end up having the real conversations, the stuff you're struggling with and stuff like that, it is so refreshing. Like I noticed in my friendships when I've finally had real conversations with some people that I've known for a while, but never really talked about the stuff that's not like bright and shiny. They would sort of come back the next day, maybe not on the spot. It might take them off guard, but then the next day they'll come back with, actually, yeah, I was struggling with the same thing 2 years ago, or I've got this issue, or whatever it is. And then
Mm.
it sort of makes you feel less alone, because it's like, oh, okay, everybody's
Yeah.
got something that they're dealing with. It's not just like you've got problems and everybody else is living the ideal life. But if you don't make that effort to go deeper with at least a few people, you could genuinely feel like you are the only person that's struggling right now and everybody's having a great time. Everyone's enjoying a perfect brunch at a fancy restaurant on a sunny day. That's what Instagram makes you feel like, right? So yeah, it's so important that vulnerability aspect of it, just being real with people. You might have to take the first step if you want
Yep.
the relationship to get to that next level.
Yep. I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
There's there's so many instances of me meeting people who have been very vulnerable from the start. But the difference is they don't overshare, and
Yeah.
the difference is they own it.
Yes. Yep.
So you can be vulnerable with people and you can tell people things. You know, someone I met told her, she basically told me her entire life story in like the first minute I met her.
What?
Literally.
Okay, this person does not
But
belong on this podcast because that's a long story short podcast.
literally, and I was like, okay, that's a lot, but cool. And she's like, yep, I messed up. That's my life, but I'm here now and it's all good. And I was like, cool. So like that was it. And
Yeah,
then from then on, we just moved on
yeah,
and that was it.
gotcha. Yeah,
So
so rip it off like a band-aid.
that's
Just
it. That's it. Rather than like people trying to like, you know, tiptoe around and like trying to understand who you are and what you're doing and all of that. She just kind of, here's who I am. Here's what I've done. Here's the mistakes I've made. Don't do that. Let's move on. that sort of
Wow.
stuff. And I was
Okay.
like, wow,
Yeah.
that's really cool.
That's that is
Yeah.
a rare person.
Yeah, so all these people are quite rare. Like
Mm.
that's what you have to remember. They did spend a lot of time working on their ability to communicate. Like
Yeah.
it took them years. And by the way, and I mentioned this to a friend as well today. Like it has taken me years to get myself to the point where I'm pretty carefree about like who I communicate with and how I communicate. Not in that I don't care, but I don't have to care as much. And
Yeah.
all I need to do is just be myself. And what you see is what you get. There is nothing else other than what you're seeing right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely,
I'm
man.
one person with everyone. That's the goal. You have to be one person with everyone.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah.
That's the goal that you work towards.
Yeah, and then you can just live in, I guess, transparency, authenticity. You don't need to be like,
That's
okay,
it.
this person knows me
Yep.
as that, so I got to pretend to be that with this
Yep.
person. And yeah, that would be very psychologically demanding. You know, just like trying to live a double life and stuff. And
Yep.
yeah, absolutely, man. And that can almost go into another topic altogether in terms of like living
Yeah.
authentically and stuff like that. Staying on the topic of loneliness and like what we can do in terms of tips and tricks. We talked about a couple of apps that help. We talked about shared interest and then making that first step in approaching people, being friendly. Even if you're introverted, being extroverted for that 1 hour, it's not going to kill you. Just go out and do it. And like, what's the worst that's going to happen? Someone's going to say, "Why are you talking to me?" or
I
something like that.
mean, I
You're not gonna, you maybe feel a bit embarrassed. That's
yeah,
about it. That's the worst thing that can happen.
introverts introverts have the skill of being able to listen and ask questions.
Yes.
And that in itself is like that's an art form.
Mm.
That extroverts, I've met very few who have like done well with that or who have mastered the art of asking questions,
Yeah.
to be very, very honest. I'm not very good at that.
Mm.
But introverts just have like a natural like they know what to ask, they know how to listen, and just like an extrovert's like dream. Someone to
Yeah.
ask me questions, someone who will listen.
Absolutely. So that's a very good point. So if you're feeling a bit self-conscious as an introvert, wanting to go into these environments, there are extroverts out there that are
Start
crying
with
out for you. So
extroverts. Yeah,
make
start with
sure
extroverts.
make sure you go in, ask a few questions, and then just lay back and listen to the short
That's
story
it.
longs that come out of all these
That's
extroverts
it.
out there,
Like,
right?
oh,
Yeah,
I think that's a good place to end it for this one, I reckon.
absolutely.
A lot of
Yep.
tips. There's a lot of things for people to do, I reckon.
Yeah, 100%. And if anyone's listening and thinks like, oh, yep, they've mentioned the common hobbies like joining a club, joining something that you're interested in. They've mentioned the Bumble BFF, the meetup, but they haven't
Yeah.
mentioned this or that. Let us know because we want to know about ways that you've made friends over the years. One thing that I didn't mention is I joined a dance group. So it's sort of similar to what Nick does with his weightlifting. I'm sort of doing with some social dancing, and that's been a great way to meet people as well. Not just other male friends, which is like with Bumble BFF, you're just going to meet other male friends if you're male,
Yep.
or female friends if you're female, but you can actually meet people from the opposite sex as well. So it's always good to have some diversity in terms of people that you're connected to, people that you're close with, not just males but females, not just one ethnicity but multiple ethnicities. And so, yeah, if you want some
Yeah, agreed.
diversity in your friendship group, doing a few different things like that definitely helps. Now, dancing is not going to be for everyone. Weightlifting is not going to be for everyone. But you just got to find out what you're
Yeah.
interested in. Surely you're interested in something, and other people are interested in that thing as well. There's all these avenues in which you can find those
True.
people, make the effort. Definitely, there's some health consequences if you don't, if you're more of a stick person than a carrot person. But there's definitely some wonderful experiences that come out of it. It seems strange that we're making a podcast talking about encouraging people to make friends. Like, it's like grandparents' advice, like common sense type of thing. But when you look at the stats and you look at the amount of people that suffer from loneliness, people that will listen to a podcast but won't have a real conversation in real life with a person because they think it's too daunting or whatever it is, I think it's something that needs to be said, right? So,
Yeah,
yeah,
dude.
I'm glad we had an
Yeah.
episode about this particular topic. We will be talking about topics like this that we think will add value to people's lives. So, if you've enjoyed the episode, make sure you subscribe. We're on Spotify, we're on Anchor, and we're on YouTube. So I'm gonna
That's
put
it.
the article that we both read before this podcast in the show notes, so people can click on that link and read more about loneliness if that's what they're interested in doing. So, yep, I'll leave it
Sounds
for here.
good.
Thanks very much, Nick. Appreciate your time again,
Have a good
and
one.
I will see you in the next week.
Till next time.
Take care.